listening to Quality Time, a podcast designed to support Nebraskan providers through their journey with Step Up to Quality. I am your host, Colleen Schmidt. Get ready to listen as we prepare to elevate each other as we step up to quality. Welcome back, everyone. Today we have our returning champ, Rae Pica. She's our returning champ. She's back with us again. As some of you may remember from season 2, Rae is a speaker, author, consultant, and whole child advocate. Rae focuses on the learning and the education and development of the whole child. Her work is primarily dedicated to the understanding, now confirmed through brain research, that the mind and body are connected and interdependent. Rae believes children do not exist only from the neck up. I love that. Rae, we are so excited to have you back. You were our most viewed episode from season 2. No surprise.
That's really cool.
That's no surprise.
Thank you.
That was a really good episode. I loved that you shared your voice, but something I want to do before we jump in, Rae, is I need to love on you a little bit.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you, because often I hear you say that it almost feels like you are banging your head against a wall or pushing the rock up the hill. Only to
me and Sisyphus. Yep.
Yes, I know that you have mentioned before that you feel that way, and I want you to hear that you might not realize the impact that you're making, particularly here in Nebraska with the work that you've done over the last year or so with us. We did a large book study across the state on Spark Revolution. The feedback we got was so impactful that I want you to know that by sharing your voice on podcasts, by writing the books that you're writing, you don't always see or hear the impact you make, but it is profound, especially lately. So I want you to hear that.
Thank you, Colleen. That does mean an awful lot to me. It's what keeps me going, despite how tired I am.
Good. I hope it refuels you, because I do mean that. There was just, particularly in the book study we did with Spark Revolution, there were so many professionals who had never thought of advocacy in the same way that you made it so digestible, so real. And that was our topic last season too. You talked about advocacy. And, because of that, our theme for season 3 is advocacy.
That's pretty wonderful. Thank you. That's really great.
I do believe that came directly from the impact that you made on us here in Nebraska. So particularly me, I see myself as an advocate in a different light, and I know others do too. That's
so great. Well, yeah. Nebraska holds a special place in my heart.
Well, I love that you're back. I love that you want to talk. Our overall theme, as I just said, is advocacy, but I want to talk about advocacy and play today. You have a new book, number 23.
Number 23, yes. I definitely have a writing disease.
Tell us the title.
Why play? ? Which is a question I never thought we'd have to ask. How to make play an essential part of early education.
Talk to our listeners right away. Why? Why is it essential for our workforce to be advocates for play? What does play do for kids? Why does it matter?
Oh my gosh. Play does everything for kids. I mean, play is how nature intended them to learn and to grow, physically, emotionally, socially, cognitively. It always astonishes me that we think maybe we have a better idea than nature did. It's kind of arrogant, isn't it? A little egotistical. We don't. The young of all species, including the human species, is meant to learn and grow through play. I mean, I always use the image of, baby animals, baby kittens, baby puppies, baby goats. We would never try to stop them from playing, and yet we're preventing children from playing. And, I think the simplest answer, now that I've babbled on, is that they have so few years, just this teeny tiny portion of the lifespan to be children. And we need to let them be children. It seems preposterous that I have to say that, but childhood is not looking like childhood anymore.
Yeah, even with having my own kiddos, my baby is 8, which is the end of early childhood,
yeah.
right? It's her last year. I told her, I go, this is your last year of being a baby.
She must have been glad to hear that.
Yeah,
I'm sure
she doesn't like that.
She feels very adult already.
She's very big. But when even I watch her play and how she still plays at the end of early childhood, what it still looks like and how much it still matters. And I'm having to be more intentional about making sure that in our day, is there still opportunity for play? Like, am I limiting screens? Am I not overscheduling her with sports or with even sometimes play dates can be
Right.
like this? You know what I mean? So yeah, I agree that we've kind of lost sight of what early childhood is and what that time frame can do for our kids and their development of self. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how play could impact sense of self?
Well, play provides so many of the characteristics and traits, helps build them that we want as adults. You know, empathy and compassion and the ability to work well with others, cooperation, collaboration, all kinds of social skills. I mean, it all goes into being oneself. And then, it's the way they express their feelings and find some control over their world, which they have very little of to begin with. Nancy Carlson Page, a fierce advocate for children, has said if they don't express their feelings through play, where do those feelings go? And it's something that I worry about, especially these days. And Dr. Peter Gray has linked the decline of play to the increase of anxiety and depression in children. Yeah, it's a frightening thing to think about anxious, depressed preschoolers, but we have them. We have many, many, many of them.
Absolutely. And I think there's lots of things that contributes to that. And a lack of play definitely is one of them. And the research supports that. But I also think in our changing world, with the amount of screen time that they have, that doesn't promote creative thinking where
Not
play.
At all. Not at all. In the chapter on block play, I use the example of creating a block with, on a computer with a mouse versus with your hands, where you can touch them. I mean, you can feel everything about the blocks. You can see them. You can smell them. It's a three-dimensional experience, and that's what young children need. Three-dimensional experiences. They're active experiential learners, and there's no way you can get the same satisfaction from building a block tower on a computer, and it doesn't provide the same learning experiences, which is kind of ironic because today's parents and decision makers are all about the learning experiences, and they're going about it the wrong way. So advocacy is critical. We have to advocate. And that's just another word for educate. And that's what we do. We're educators.
I think I like that you're using that as a synonym. I think that helps make more sense of that word again, even though I already feel like from reading Spark that you dispelled lots of myths about what advocacy is or isn't. I like educate. And I think part of it, Rae, is educating ourselves as the workforce to understand the power of play and to have that in my back pocket. And in your book, you talk about the different types of play, and I can geek out on play all the time, like all day. We could really get geeky, but give our listeners a little nugget or a little taste about the different types of play.
there are 12 chapters, and each chapter is dedicated to a different type of play. So there are 12 different types of play. When Teachers College Press first approached me and asked me to write a book about play, I thought, well, I don't know. What do I have to say that hasn't been said already?
Mm-hmm.
But then having just written Spark a Revolution in Early Childhood, or whatever the title was, in early education, I thought, well, I could advocate for play, for each different type of play, because we need those sound bites. We need those bits of information to include in our newsletters and our emails to parents and all of that. Well, it starts off with free play, of course, which is what many play advocates consider to be the most important type, and sometimes the only type of play. And that makes me a little sad, because there's value in the others as well. Then that's followed by guided play, which free play advocates find controversial, surprisingly. And I didn't know that before I joined a conversation on Facebook and was promptly shot down. But guided play is what most of my work has been about, lo these many years and decades. And I would hate to think it's all been for nothing. Guided play is when there is a learning outcome in mind. So, say the learning goal is self-regulation, and you play a game of statues with the children. Now, we don't want too much adult involvement. With guided play, there is some. With free play, there isn't. With guided play, there is some, but it's just a matter of, setting up the environment, excuse me, for play, or, asking an occasional question. With statues, the teacher is responsible for starting the music, and the children move in any way they want. So they have that autonomy. The autonomy has to be part of it for it to be true play. And then when the teacher pauses the music, the children freeze into a statue. Now, we know that holding still is not, in their skill set, and that it is actually a very advanced form of balance. Sitting still is a very advanced form of balance. So activities like this, where they want to hold still, gives them that practice. Telling them to hold still doesn't work, but playing statues gets them to hold still. And so that's a little bit about guided play. Oh, there's loose parts play. There's risky play, which people think is pretty much anything these days. There's rough and tumble, which falls under the heading of risky, but has its own separate category. What else is, cooperative play. Cooperative play is one of my favorites. It just is. We spend so much time thinking about competition in this country, and we seem to believe that children need to be raised to fend off this dog-eat-dog world. But in the real world, there's really very little hand-to-hand competition, head-to-head competition. But think about the amount of cooperation that is required over the course of a lifetime. We have to cooperate and get along with family members, not always easy, with spouses, with co-workers, community workers, church members, whatever it may be. There's far more opportunities for cooperation, and yet we don't focus on helping children learn cooperative skills. And, all of these skills that we want them to have over the course of a lifetime, we start introducing to them in early childhood. And if all we ever play is traditional musical chairs, and we teach them that there's always going to be only one winner, I don't think that's a very good message for them. But if we show them how to work together in cooperative musical chairs, that's a whole other story.
I want to talk, I agree, everything you said about that, about how we need to teach them to work together and cooperate. And that's partly what cooperative play is doing, is kind of practicing these skills that we need as grownups, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to talk about risky play. I was recently, and this was the first time I've ever seen it, but I was recently doing an observation in a preschool public school setting. And the teacher was a seasoned teacher. She had been there for 35 plus years, long time. She allowed risky or rough and tumble play inside. And it took me a minute to kind of figure out how to, I was doing a formal observation and I'm like, how does this fit? And am I using my own bias of what I think play looks like or is appropriate in school versus, and it was totally safe. She had expectations. She had already set up limits with what was a yes or what was, maybe too much. And it was so fun to see. So can you talk a little bit about the taboo that might come along with either risky play or rough and tumble play?
Well, we've always, been afraid that children will hurt themselves, but it's gotten to the point now where, we do want to bubble wrap them and prevent them from getting any boo-boos. In the book, I tell the story of young Clark, who was 7 years old when I moved next door to him. And over the course of, the time I lived there, I saw him get bloodied and bandaged and broken bones. I mean, it was a rite of passage in childhood. And now, we've taken away the monkey bars. We don't let them climb trees. I mean, all these things that nature intended them to do in order to learn to assess risk, right? Yeah, I mean, it's taboo because of adult fears, and we bring those fears to the children. It's not a good idea to do that. We want them to be able to think, can I reach the next rung? Can I, jump over that puddle without landing in it? Is that branch going to hold me? They're born to take risks and to learn how to do that. I think about children who aren't allowed to take any risks, and they're not going to discover how just because they've aged chronologically.
Right.
It's just not a skill that's suddenly going to appear. They're going to be very risk aversive. And okay, so people might think, so what's the big deal? I don't take any risks in life. Well, sure. Every time you introduce yourself to a new neighbor or to somebody in a social situation, I mean, anytime a child raises her hand in class, that's taking a risk, right? Entrepreneurs and inventors and scientists and all these people are always taking risks. Even being miserable in one job and deciding to leave and find another. It's all about risk. So, yeah, you said the teacher I love that the teacher was doing that. I just think that's astonishing and wonderful. Right? Had set limits. I think that when you work together with the children to set those limits and they take some ownership of the protocols and the rules and such, then they're much more likely to want to follow them. And, it requires observation on the teacher's part.
Yes.
And we don't step in unless something drastic is happening. As long as the children are smiling, having fun, we can tell whether or not it's play.
Right.
And as long as it's play, it's good. Rough and tumble play is seen in all cultures and in almost all mammals, I think, or maybe all mammals, and even I read what dragonflies or whatever, it's just imagine trying to keep kittens and puppies from wrestling with one another.
Right. It's how we're intrinsically made.
Yes. I can't remember who I cited in that chapter on risky play, but these researchers referred to it as adventurous play. And maybe if we called it that instead, because Mariana Brusoni, I believe her name is, another researcher has said that risk has taken on a whole new meaning these days. It now is synonymous with danger, and that wasn't its original intention. So yeah,
Do you want to hear a funny story?
always.
So and I like to share stories of my own little growth mindset, especially with risky play, or I like adventurous play. I think you're right. That word change might give it a different taste in people's mouths. We have 4 kids. The way that the 2 older girls were raised versus my 2 younger ones is very different because I went through my own paradigm shift as an early childhood provider, as a mother, as someone continuing to learn about play. And my son we have these big trees in the backyard, big, huge trees. And my son was playing outside. He was 10 at the time and had climbed clear up onto one of the big branches. And the older 2 girls come home and they see him and they go, "I thought we couldn't climb trees." Oh gosh. I'm like, "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm sure I was so much more of a helicopter bubble wrap mama with you guys because I didn't understand the value of exactly what you just said, Rae, with they're born to take risk. Like when he's climbing that tree, he's assessing what is safe, what's not, the cause and effect, right? Like if
Exactly. Yeah.
up on a small branch, I'm going to fall and stumble and possibly get really hurt.
Yeah, but gravity. It's all about gravity.
Yeah, lots of science lessons with doing some of that adventurous play. And I think the more we grow and know as caregivers, then we can make those changes. So
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
conversations.
And you know what else is happening when he's climbing a tree? He's, that big body play, the muscles and all of that, the hands, that's all preparing him to hold a pencil, to write. It's giving him the shoulder strength, the hand strength. And I've heard many an occupational therapist say that the best way to help children learn how to grasp a pencil properly is to let them climb trees and swing from monkey bars. So, people don't know that, and I get it.
And I think part of that makes it so tricky or challenging is not everyone has had the same exposure to research, right?
Right.
Especially you, like you've been researching and writing and, speaking about this for a long time. But how do we support our families? How do we support policymakers? How do we support, district leaders or administrators who don't understand the value of everything you just kind of talked about? How do we get them on board?
Well, I covered that pretty extensively in Spark a Revolution. It depends on your comfort level. I mean, are you comfortable going to a school board meeting and standing in front of a microphone? Are you comfortable in coming to DC and testifying before Congress? Probably most of us are going to say no to that, but we can. And I think it's really important to start with the parents. It may be thought of as a bottom-up approach as opposed to top-down, starting with the politicians. But the parents have a lot of power because they were actually responsible for a lot of the play-based early learning programs disappearing because they wanted to see early academics because they're getting so much misinformation. And we live in a fear-based society, and they're always being made to be afraid. Oh, if my child falls behind, et cetera, et cetera. So if we start with the parents, then, they also are voters, and they help us bring in people who are going to listen to us. It's a lot easier to deal with people who are going to listen to us than with those who are going to oppose us at every step of the way. And there are so many ways to reach the parents these days with all those apps that they have for communicating with them. You talked about, rough and tumble play in the classroom, and Mike Huber writes about that and says that, he sends home video of what's happening, or he invites the parents to come in and watch it. I'm not sure which, it might be both. And they see the joy and excitement that children are experiencing, and they see that it's not harmful, and the light bulb goes on. So, the videos, the photos, explaining what they're learning, in every email, every newsletter that gets sent to parents, there can be a little, a little note about play, a quote, perhaps Einstein's, I look at play as the highest form of research. I mean, it's hard to argue with Einstein. Anybody really. So, we help them see what the children are learning. We help them see that this is what child development is all about, and that child development can't be changed. We do book studies that, the way Nebraska did, with the teachers and parents that are part of our school's community. It's really interesting because you and I were talking before we get online here about the web event that Teachers College Press sponsored, where Sally Hoy and I were discussing play. And Teachers College Press gathered questions from the registrants beforehand. And I was surprised by the number of directors who asked, how do we get our teachers in line with a play-based approach? That really surprised me. But when we think about it, so many of the directors are, as you use the term, seasoned, and the teachers are young, and I have to remember that they didn't have the same kind of childhood that I had. They're digital natives, and most likely they were overscheduled and didn't have time for all that play that I had as a child. So, of course, the young teachers are not seeing the value of it either. So, it's a battle we're fighting on all sides.
I have so much to I have so many thoughts on that, on what you're saying about, our new generation of the workforce that's coming in, did not have the same experience as those of us who have had childhoods without interruptions such as technology or overscheduling or things like that. Like I grew up, I'm probably one of the last generations to have had a childhood like that, really.
Oh, how sad.
I know. We're we're on the verge of, I didn't have a cell phone until college. Like that wasn't a thing. That wasn't around. But when we're talking about new workforce and what you said about being surprised that the directors are wanting support on how do I get my teachers to see it, and we're wanting our parents to understand the value of play at home, and we're wanting kindergarten to understand the value of play and leadership. What I always think about, Rae, is it can't come from a place of shame or judgment or I know more than you and I'm right and just do it, because we won't get anywhere. Then we are going to push that up if we make anyone feel less or like they don't understand.
Excellent point. That's a really excellent point. I'm glad you brought it up. I always talk about sharing the research, obviously we're not going to hand them, research articles from the Journal of Child Development, because even if they wanted to read it, they don't have time to read it. So, we maybe make a little sheet with some bullet points, highlight them. Or there's a great article about play in teaching young children or something, and we share it with them with enthusiasm so that we don't seem like I know better than you do. Yeah. Oh, I just came across this great article on play and I thought you'd like to read it. If we're going to put it in the cubbies, then we include a note that says something similar. I said something recently and it kind of struck me. It's obviously true, but I hadn't really thought about it. A parent can't help but love a person who also loves their child.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we do it all with love, Look at the joy your child is experiencing. Oh, he's learning so much by doing this, that, or the other thing. If we share the parent's love of the child, we won't get that pushback. We won't come across as the know-it-alls.
Yeah. And I think that's true with supporting our new providers and our new workforce too. If we do it with love, like if I come in as a director or a coach and I model what guided play is, and I sit down and I just sit by that educator and I just model and we just play and see how scary it could seem in theory versus what it actually is in practice. You know what I mean?
I do.
It's so abstract to someone who doesn't understand the power of play. But if I sit down and play with you and play with the kids, that's how I think through what you just said, through love.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Modeling is probably the most powerful tool that we have, whether we're modeling for parents or policymakers or other professionals. I love the idea of getting policymakers into the classrooms and witnessing things. Sometimes I get a little mean. I think, oh, let's make them sit in little desks and do worksheets for hours at a time with no breaks. And then maybe we'll let them up and we'll get some active learning, some play going on, and they can see the difference.
We have providers here in Nebraska who shared during our book study talk about advocacy and when we got to the chapter on policymakers, and they shared that they take their kids to the Capitol so that the policymakers see the children's faces and the kids see the policymakers. And I thought that was like a groundbreaking way to kind of go about it too.
Yeah, I wonder, some of these people, we don't tend to have a lot of young policymakers. And I wonder, Bev Boss called it childhood amnesia, where we forget what it's like to be a child and we maybe forget what children look like, even I am surprised sometimes because I work so much with the adults. If I walk into a situation that's full of 3 and 4-year-olds, I go, oh my gosh, they're so little. They're just so little. So yeah, that's a really great idea.
Isn't that fun? I thought that was just the coolest that they shared that. And then since they shared that message, others got inspired and were like, we could do that too, even if we live far from the Capitol. We can send pictures, we can write letters, we can with the kids.
Well, what do they say about pictures, right? It's worth 1,000 words.
It really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like what you said about modeling. I agree with you too. There's nothing more powerful than really just sitting down, and then it is through love instead of judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Rae, I want to know, do you play? What's it look like for you? What does play look like for you?
Well, I want to say I play words with friends. That's kind of sedentary, isn't it? But I'm trying to keep my mind sharp. I play spelling bee and Wordle on New York Times. I love all that stuff. I start my day that way. Well, now that I have the new cat, it's a little more challenging to start the day that way before I even get out of bed. But I walk every day and listen to the birds. There are no earpods on my head when I'm walking. I'm taking in the nature. For me, going out to brunch with other women is playing. So I made a promise to myself that, and this was, recently after I lost my cat Mickey, that I would try to fill my life with as much joy as possible. And so whatever joy means for you, is what you need to seek. And joy is synonymous with play.
Yes. Yes. Isn't that the truth? And I bet even when you're writing, don't you sometimes, I feel like that when I write, sometimes depends. If it's like fun and I'm writing, that to me is play or creating something. That's a form of joy.
I love to write. I love to write. Yeah. not that we don't get stuck and want to pull our hair out or throw the computer out the window, but for the most part, yeah. I mean, creating. When I first moved to this area, I took an art class, and I need to do that again. Abstract acrylic painting. I mean, that's definitely playing.
Yeah.
I play with the cat. It's yeah. It has so many different meanings to everybody. So
I love how you made the synonym of joy with play. And I think that's true. And that's how you can tell when children are in play, is by watching the joy that comes.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
joy and fun is what intrinsically motivates children. We want them to be intrinsically motivated to do things because they want to do it, because it feels good to them. We don't want them to do it because they're going to get a good grade or a gold star or, a pizza. I mean, whatever it might be. Because if we keep feeding them those rewards, then what's going to make them want to run the race if they're not going to get first place trophy? What's going to make them do a good job with the report at work when they're an adult, if they're not going to get a pat on the back? Very few bosses are going to give them that pat on the back and tell them what a good job they did. They have to be intrinsically motivated to do a good job, to run the race, because it provides that satisfaction for them. So yeah, intrinsic motivation is what we're after. And it's really easy with children. They just want, Cyndi Lauper should have said, children just want to have fun.
Next book, Rae, number 24.
Oh, no.
Let's give our listeners a little bit more information about where they can find book number 23, Why Play? ? By Rae Pica. And you mentioned earlier before we hit record that there is a discount code, which I will link in our show notes. But tell everybody where they can find your new book.
Teachers College Press. I think it's tcpress.com.
Mm-hmm.
But we can Google anything these days and find it. And if you use the special discount code that I sent you, you'll get 20% off, which
Yay!
I think is just so great of TCP to do that, and it's especially for the people in Nebraska.
Yay! Just for our Nebraskan providers listening straight from Rae Pica. And we appreciate you so much. I truly do mean that about the impact you've made, particularly in our state, but worldwide. Like you really.
Thank you. You're going to make me cry. Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot to me, Colleen.
I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I truly do. I very much mean that. You've made a big impact on me, especially too. So I appreciate it.
I need to award you the title of super fan.
I want it. I am number one fan girl, Rae Pica. I have people in Nebraska who might want to battle me for that, though. I will tell you. But I'm up there. I'm in the top 10 for sure.
Very sweet.
Rae, I can't thank you enough for your yes again to join and share your expertise. I loved our topic on play. I'm excited for others to get a hold of more of what you have to say about play in your latest book. So thank you again for joining.
Thank you for inviting me again, Colleen.
And thank you, everyone, for joining and listening and spending quality time with us. Please come back again as we chat about future topics to support our Nebraskan providers on their journeys with Step Up to Quality. Until next time, bye-bye.